Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever played hide and seek as a child? Do you remember the thrill of finding a great hiding spot, the anticipation of being discovered, and the joy or frustration of searching for others? It's a simple game, yet it holds a profound metaphor for our spiritual journey. Today, I'd like to reflect on how our relationship with God sometimes feels like an eternal game of hide and seek. The childhood game of hide and seek is a universal experience, one that brings with it a mix of excitement, anticipation, and discovery. As children, we learned the thrill of quickly finding the perfect hiding spot, tucking ourselves into corners, behind doors, or beneath furniture, hoping not to be discovered. At the same time, we experienced the joy of being the seeker, searching intently, peering into every nook and cranny, our hearts racing at the thought of uncovering someone. This simple game, so familiar to many of us, carries profound lessons that resonate far beyond childhood play. It mirrors aspects of our spiritual journey, offering a poignant metaphor for our relationship with God and the moments when He seems either very near or frustratingly distant. In the context of faith, this game takes on a deeper dimension. There are moments in life when it feels as though God is right there, almost tangible in the nearness of His presence. It's like finding someone hiding behind a curtain that barely conceals them. The connection feels simple, direct, and unmissable. In these times, we feel as though every prayer is answered, every doubt clarified, and every path illuminated by His guidance. These moments of closeness remind us of the comfort and assurance of being in God's care. We experience His presence in the beauty of nature, the warmth of human connection, and the stillness of our hearts when we pray or reflect. In such moments, we feel embraced, deeply known, and fully understood. Yet, just as easily as we experience this closeness, life has a way of shifting. There are seasons when God feels distant, almost as if He's hidden from us, and we find ourselves questioning His presence. It's as though the game has changed, and He has chosen the most obscure, unreachable hiding place. In these times, our prayers might feel like they're echoing into a void, and our hearts might wrestle with doubt and frustration. We wonder where He has gone, why He seems silent, and whether He is even there at all. These moments are not uncommon and have been experienced by believers across generations. Even in the Bible, figures like David cried out, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" Such moments of perceived absence can feel unsettling, like wandering aimlessly in search of something we cannot find. When we look deeper, we begin to see that this sense of hiding may not be God's attempt to withdraw from us, but rather His way of inviting us into a more profound pursuit of Him. Just as in hide and seek, where the seeker's thrill lies in the process of searching and discovering, so too is our spiritual journey enriched by the act of seeking God. This pursuit requires more than a casual glance. It demands an intentional and wholehearted effort. It calls us to look beyond the surface, to listen more carefully, and to trust even when we cannot see clearly. In the seeking, we are transformed. Our faith grows stronger, our patience deeper, and our ability to recognize God's presence sharper. God's hiding is not about elusiveness, but about teaching us to focus our hearts and minds on Him. In the search, we may find Him in places we never expected, in the kindness of a stranger, the beauty of creation, or even in the quiet moments of our pain and struggle. The search itself becomes a sacred journey, one that reveals not only more about who God is, but also more about ourselves and our capacity to trust in His goodness. When God feels hidden, it is easy to assume that He has withdrawn or distanced Himself from us, leaving us to navigate life alone. However, this perception often arises not from His absence, but from His desire to draw us into a deeper and more meaningful pursuit of Him. The act of seeking God is not a futile effort, but a transformative journey, one that shapes and refines us in ways that only the search itself can accomplish. The invitation to seek God with all our hearts is both a challenge and a promise, as reflected in the words of Jeremiah 29:13, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." This verse speaks to the relational nature of faith, emphasizing that the depth of our connection with God is directly tied to the sincerity and intensity of our pursuit. To seek God wholeheartedly is not a passive endeavor. It requires us to step beyond the routines of life and actively engage in a process of discovery. This means setting aside time to pray, meditate, and reflect, even when answers do not come immediately. It means delving into Scripture not as a mere exercise in reading, but as an opportunity to listen for His voice, to understand His character, and to discern His will. The pursuit of God is an intentional act that calls for vulnerability, honesty, and perseverance, especially during moments when it feels as though He is silent. These moments of silence are not indicators of abandonment, but opportunities for growth. They challenge us to move beyond superficial faith and to develop a trust that is rooted in the certainty of His presence, even when it is not immediately evident. In this journey, the act of seeking becomes transformative. As we search for God, we begin to see Him in places and situations we might have otherwise overlooked. The pursuit sharpens our awareness and deepens our ability to recognize His fingerprints in our lives. We may find Him in the quiet moments of reflection, in the unspoken kindness of a friend, or in the beauty of creation that surrounds us. The process of seeking shifts our focus, helping us to move away from distractions and toward a clearer understanding of His love and purpose. It is not uncommon for the very act of searching to reveal truths about ourselves as well. We come face to face with our doubts, fears, and longings, and in doing so, we are given the chance to bring these to God, trusting that He will meet us where we are. The promise that we will find God when we seek Him wholeheartedly is not an empty one. It reflects the heart of a Creator who desires relationship and communion with His creation. Unlike in human relationships, where the act of hiding might be intended to create distance or elude discovery, God's hiding serves a redemptive purpose. He is never truly out of reach, but He knows that the process of searching will draw us closer to Him in ways that a constant and obvious presence might not. The act of seeking fosters a dependence on Him, teaching us to rely not on our own understanding but on His wisdom and guidance. This pursuit, while sometimes challenging, is also filled with moments of joy and revelation. There is an undeniable satisfaction in the moments when we catch glimpses of His presence, whether in the resolution of a difficult situation, the words of a loved one, or the peace that surpasses understanding during times of trial. These moments remind us that God is not playing a game of evasion, but rather inviting us into a deeper, richer experience of His love. The process is as important as the discovery, for it is in the journey of seeking that we are shaped, refined, and prepared to recognize and embrace the fullness of His presence when we encounter it. The process of seeking God is not merely about reaching a destination or finding immediate answers. It is about the journey itself, which has the power to transform our hearts and minds in ways we may not initially understand. Much like the seeker in a game of hide and seek, the joy and growth are found not only in discovering what is hidden, but in the act of searching, which requires effort, focus, and persistence. The journey of faith is one that invites us to actively engage with the unknown, to embrace the uncertainty of the search, and to trust that something beautiful and meaningful will come out of it. As we set out to seek God, we often begin with a sense of anticipation, driven by the hope of finding clarity, peace, or direction. Yet the process can also bring moments of frustration and doubt when we don't immediately find what we're looking for. In those moments, it is tempting to give up or to question whether the search is worth it. However, it is precisely in those challenging moments that the most significant transformation occurs. The act of seeking requires us to stretch beyond our comfort zones, to exercise faith in the unseen, and to develop resilience in the face of uncertainty. It is in the persistence of the search that we begin to grow, not only in our understanding of God, but also in our understanding of ourselves and our place in His greater plan. The process of seeking God teaches us patience, as we learn to wait for His timing and trust that He is at work, even when we cannot immediately perceive it. This patience is not passive, it is an active trust that compels us to continue the search, to keep praying, and to remain open to His guidance. In this way, the journey of seeking becomes a practice in surrender, as we release our need for immediate answers and learn to rely on His wisdom and sovereignty. Through this surrender, we are often surprised by the ways God chooses to reveal Himself. Sometimes it is in the stillness of a quiet moment, the beauty of a sunset, or the unexpected kindness of a stranger. Other times it is through the challenges we face, as we come to realize that even in difficulty, He is shaping us for something greater. The joy in the search comes not only from finding what we are looking for, but also from discovering new perspectives and insights along the way. As we seek God, we begin to notice His presence in places we may have previously overlooked. We see His hand in the small details of our lives, in the connections we share with others, and in the moments of grace that carry us through difficult times. The process of seeking opens our eyes to the ways God is already at work, even when we are not consciously aware of it. It is in these moments of realization that we find a deeper sense of gratitude and wonder, as we come to understand that God's presence has been with us all along, even when we felt distant from Him. The search for God has a way of refining our priorities and redirecting our focus. As we seek Him, we become more attuned to what truly matters, letting go of distractions and aligning our lives more closely with His purpose. This alignment brings a sense of peace and fulfillment, as we realize that the journey itself is an expression of our relationship with God. The act of seeking becomes a way of drawing closer to Him, of learning to recognize His voice and respond to His call. In this ongoing journey, the search itself becomes a sacred experience, one that shapes us in profound and lasting ways. In the game of hide and seek, there are times when we switch roles, moving from seeking to hiding. In our spiritual lives, this dynamic is equally present. While we often talk about seeking God, we sometimes forget that we, too, have a tendency to hide. We hide not in playful innocence, but often in fear, shame, or self-preservation. We conceal ourselves behind the busyness of life, the masks we wear, and the walls we build to protect ourselves from vulnerability. This act of hiding, however, does not escape God's notice, nor does it diminish His desire to draw us out into the light of His love and grace. From the very beginning of humanity's story, this tendency to hide has been evident. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, after disobeying God, hid among the trees, covering themselves with fig leaves in an attempt to mask their shame. They heard the sound of God walking in the garden, and instead of running to Him, they chose to conceal themselves. God's response was not one of anger or frustration, but of tender pursuit. He called out to them, "Where are you?" This question was not because He did not know their physical location, but because He wanted them to step out of hiding and back into relationship with Him. This moment reveals a profound truth about God's nature. Even when we hide, He seeks us with love and gentleness. Our reasons for hiding from God are often rooted in our fear of being fully seen. We worry that if God truly knows the depth of our mistakes, doubts, or insecurities, He might reject us. Yet this fear is unfounded, for God already knows us completely. Psalm 139 reminds us that He has searched us and knows us, that He is acquainted with all our ways. There is nothing we can hide from Him, and yet He loves us fully and unconditionally. This truth challenges the lies we tell ourselves about needing to be perfect or worthy in order to approach Him. When we hide, we are often trying to protect ourselves from the vulnerability of confession and the possibility of judgment. In hiding, we also cut ourselves off from the healing and restoration that only God can provide. The walls we build to keep God out may feel like a refuge, but they are actually barriers that keep us isolated and prevent us from experiencing the fullness of His love. In reality, stepping into the light of God's presence is not an act of exposing our flaws to be condemned, but an act of surrendering our burdens to be healed. God's pursuit of us is not driven by a need to catch us in our hiding places, but by His deep desire to restore and reconcile. His call to us, like His call to Adam and Eve, is an invitation to relationship. He does not force us out of hiding. Instead, He gently calls our names, waiting patiently for us to respond. This patience reflects His understanding of our fears and His respect for our free will. He knows that coming out of hiding requires trust, and He is faithful to meet us with grace when we take that step. The process of stepping out of hiding is not always easy. It requires honesty with ourselves and with God. It requires acknowledging the things we would rather keep hidden and trusting that God's love is greater than our shame. Yet when we do take that step, we find freedom. We discover that God's light does not expose us to humiliate us, but to illuminate the path to healing and transformation. In His presence, our fears are replaced with peace, and our shame is replaced with the assurance of His forgiveness. God's pursuit of us is unlike any other pursuit we experience in life. Unlike human relationships, where one might withdraw or distance themselves after being ignored or rejected, God's pursuit is unwavering, consistent, and filled with love. His desire to seek and find us is not contingent on our behavior, nor is it based on our perfection. God's love for us is unconditional, and He never stops seeking us, no matter how far we wander or how deeply we hide. Even in our moments of rebellion, confusion, or disconnection, God's heart remains focused on us, always longing for our return to Him. His pursuit is not motivated by a need to control or judge, but by an immeasurable love that desires to restore, heal, and draw us closer to His heart. The story of God's pursuit is evident throughout Scripture, from the earliest pages of the Bible to the final verses of Revelation. One of the most vivid depictions of this pursuit is seen in the parable of the lost sheep, where Jesus tells the story of a shepherd who leaves 99 sheep in search of one that is lost. This story highlights not just the shepherd's awareness of the lost sheep, but also his relentless pursuit, leaving behind the safe and secure to search for the one that has gone astray. This parable speaks to the very nature of God's love. He does not rest until every lost soul is found and returned to him. The pursuit is not based on our worthiness, but on his immense value for each of his children. We may not always recognize it, but God's pursuit is constant. In the quiet moments of our lives when we feel far from him or uncertain of his presence, he is still seeking us. It might not always be in dramatic, life-changing moments that we recognize this pursuit, but rather in the small, everyday ways that he reaches out to us. It can be seen in the gentle whisper of encouragement when we feel discouraged, the peace that unexpectedly fills our hearts during times of unrest, or the unexpected support of friends and family who are God's hands and feet in our lives. Even in the struggles and challenges we face, God's pursuit is present, not as a distant observer, but as an active participant in our lives, working behind the scenes, drawing us closer to him through every circumstance. His pursuit also reflects his infinite patience. God does not rush us or push us to come back to him before we are ready. Instead, he waits with open arms, patiently calling us to return when the time is right. He does not condemn us for our mistakes, but invites us to bring them to him, knowing that in his presence we can find forgiveness, healing, and restoration. This patience speaks to the depth of God's love. He is not only willing to wait for us to return, but he is also committed to guiding us gently through the process of coming back to him. God's pursuit is ultimately about restoring the relationship that was broken. It is a pursuit of love, of reconciliation, and of healing. Even when we feel unworthy or distant, God does not give up on us. He continuously seeks to bring us back into right relationship with him, to remind us that we are his beloved children, and that nothing can separate us from his love. This pursuit is not about punishment or judgment, but about an invitation to experience the fullness of his grace, mercy, and love. As we reflect on God's unyielding pursuit of us, we are reminded of our own role in this relationship. While God is always seeking us, we too are called to seek him. The beauty of this divine pursuit is that it is a two-way invitation. God's call to us is an invitation to draw near to him, to come out of hiding, and to engage in the journey of seeking him with our whole hearts. In this mutual pursuit, we discover a deeper sense of intimacy, trust, and love, and we are reminded that the pursuit itself is just as valuable as the destination. In the game of hide and seek, there is a simple yet profound truth. The outcome is not about who wins or loses, but about the joy found in the connection between the seeker and the one being sought. In the same way, the spiritual journey of seeking and being found by God leads us to a deeper and more meaningful relationship with him. The pursuit of God, whether we are the one searching or being found, is ultimately about transformation and the joy of communion with our Creator. It is through the act of seeking God and allowing ourselves to be found by him that we come to understand more fully the depth of his love and the richness of his grace. The joy of the spiritual journey is not simply in the moments of discovery, but in the process itself. As we seek God, we are shaped and refined, learning more about who we are and who God calls us to be. Each step of the journey reveals new aspects of his character, his love, and his purpose for our lives. As we seek him more earnestly, we begin to experience his presence in deeper and more intimate ways. We learn to see his hand at work in our lives, to hear his voice calling us forward, and to feel his embrace in the moments when we feel most lost. The joy comes not from having all the answers or from reaching some final destination, but from the continuous discovery of God's nearness and the deepening of our relationship with him. This journey of seeking and being found is not one of perfection, but of grace. There will be moments when we stumble, when we grow weary, or when we feel as though God is hidden from us. There will be times when our faith falters and our trust wavers. Yet it is precisely in these moments that God's love and faithfulness shine brightest. He is not waiting for us to be perfect before he welcomes us. He is simply waiting for us to come to him, just as we are. God's love is unconditional and unwavering, and it is this love that gives us the strength to continue seeking him, even when the path seems uncertain or difficult. The joy of the journey lies in the knowledge that we are never alone. that God is always there, calling us forward with grace and mercy. The outcome of the game, the discovery of God's presence and love, is not a fleeting moment but a lasting transformation. When we allow ourselves to be found by God, we are not just found in the moment but are forever changed. We are transformed by His love, by His truth, and by the deep connection that we experience with Him. The joy of being found is not merely about the relief of being discovered, but about the new identity we receive in Christ. As we encounter God's love, we are reminded that we are His children, that we are deeply valued and cherished, and that nothing can separate us from His love. This new identity shapes the way we live, the way we love, and the way we see the world around us. In this journey of seeking and being found, we are also called to share the joy of discovery with others. Just as we experience the joy of being found by God, we are called to help others discover the same joy. Our own transformation becomes a witness to God's love and grace, and we are invited to share that love with the world. The game of hide and seek, in its simplest form, becomes a powerful metaphor for the gospel. God's love seeks us out, and when we are found by Him, we are invited to help others experience that same love. This process of sharing the joy of discovery extends beyond our own journey, reaching out to those who have yet to experience the fullness of God's love and grace. The game of hide and seek with God is not about winning or losing, but about being part of a beautiful, ongoing relationship with the Creator who loves us deeply. It is about the joy of seeking Him, of being found by Him, and of growing in intimacy with Him each day. As we continue to seek God, we are reminded that the journey itself is just as important as the destination, and that the joy of the journey is found in the ever-deepening connection we share with Him.